You were drawn to this message for a reason. There may be something in your energy that has been hard to explain lately. Not because you are lost, but because something deeper has been strengthening in silence. It feels like you may have been carrying the weight of being misunderstood, or being around someone whose presence made you question your own inner truth. If that is where you are, this message may be arriving right on time. And if this reading resonates with you, you can subscribe, like, or leave a comment. That small exchange always helps support the channel and deepen the energy around these messages. Now let's move into your first card. I'm seeing the 7 of Swords reversed here. And right away, this feels very important for your energy. Because this is not the card of someone weak. This is the card of someone who has been quietly seeing more than others realized. It feels like your spirit has been waking up beneath the surface. Slowly, carefully, and maybe even privately. I'm picking up that for some of you. There has been a season where you stayed quieter than usual. You may have chosen not to explain yourself. Not because you had nothing to say, but because part of you was beginning to understand that your energy did not need to fight for recognition. This card feels like truth returning. It feels like inner clarity coming back after confusion. Like your soul has been gathering its strength in the dark, and now that strength is becoming harder to ignore. There is also something here about deception, losing power. Not only the deception around you, but the old stories that made you doubt your own intuition. The energy around this card suggests that you are beginning to see through what once felt spiritually intimidating. You are beginning to notice who was performing wisdom rather than embodying it. And at the same time, you are remembering that your own connection cannot be stolen. It cannot be silenced. It cannot be overshadowed by someone louder. Your authentic spiritual frequency feels very clear here. It is observant. It is discerning. It is protected. And even if others underestimated it, your spirit has been growing roots this whole time. There is a quiet power on this card. A power that does not need to announce itself. A power that simply knows. And I do feel this is only the beginning of what your energy is about to reveal. Because the more you return to your own inner truth, the more this whole dynamic starts to change. So let's keep going. I want to see what the energy on their side is beginning to show. And now, moving into their energy, I'm seeing the 10 of Pentacles reversed here. And this immediately adds another layer to what we just felt in your first card. Because their energy does not feel empty. It feels constructed. It feels arranged very carefully. I'm picking up that this may be someone who wanted to appear established. Someone who wanted to be seen as wise, grounded, chosen, spiritually elevated. But the energy around this card suggests that a lot of that identity may have been built through image, through presentation, through the need to be recognized in a certain way. There is a strong sense here of someone who may have tied their worth to how others viewed them, to their role, their status, their influence, or the spiritual persona they had created around themselves. And for a while, that image may have looked convincing. It may have looked complete from the outside, but underneath it, I'm getting the feeling that something was not fully rooted. Something was not as stable as it seemed. This card feels like a disconnect between outer appearance and inner alignment. It feels like someone who wanted to hold spiritual authority, but may not have done the deeper work required to carry it with humility. There is also something here about legacy, about control, about wanting to be the one who defines the truth in the space, the one others look to, the one who is not questioned. And when that identity is ego-led, it can become very fragile. Because it depends on being upheld. It depends on being believed. It depends on the outer structure staying intact. So while your energy in the first card felt quiet and real, their energy here feels more performative, more attached to form, more attached to being seen a certain way. Not necessarily because they are fully aware of it, but because something inside them may have feared what would happen if that image cracked. And I do feel that this is important, because the more your authentic frequency rises, the harder it becomes for anything inauthentic to keep its shape. So let's keep following this, because I want to see how you were viewing them in this connection, and what your spirit may have already known before your mind had words for it. And now, as we move into what you sensed about them, I'm seeing the King of Wands here, and this is very revealing, because your awareness of them may have begun long before you had proof. It feels like you were picking up on a strong presence, a magnetic presence, someone who knew how to enter a space and shape the energy around them, someone who may have carried confidence very naturally, or at least appeared to. There is warmth in this card. There is charisma here. There is vision here. But I'm also getting the feeling that what you sensed was not only their light, it was the way that light seemed to need an audience. The way their energy may have wanted to lead, to influence, to be followed. And I think this is where your spirit began noticing something subtle. Because what you were feeling was not simple admiration. It was discomfort mixed with recognition. You may have seen their power, but at the same time, you may have felt that the fire around them was leaning more toward self-image than true inner stillness. The energy around this card suggests that you sensed a kind of spiritual authority that was being performed outwardly. Not always in an obvious way. Not always in a harmful way at first, but enough for your intuition to stay alert. Enough for part of you to wonder why their presence felt so strong, yet left you feeling slightly smaller around it. I'm picking up that you may have questioned yourself for noticing this, because on the surface, they may have seemed inspiring, capable, even gifted, and yet your inner world was reading something more layered, something about the need to be central, something about the need to be admired, something about the need to be the source of the flame. And your spirit noticed that, quietly, without drama, without rushing to judgment. You were simply reading the energy as it was, and that matters. Because this card shows that your intuition was not reacting from fear. It was responding to misalignment. It was responding to the difference between embodied power and projected power. That quiet awareness is important, because the next card may show how they were seeing you in return. And that is where this dynamic may become even clearer. And now, looking at what they assumed about you, I'm seeing the Nine of Pentacles reversed here. And this feels very telling, because I'm picking up that they may have mistaken your softness for dependence. They may have mistaken your quietness for uncertainty. They may have looked at the way you moved with grace, or patience, or openness, and assumed that meant you were easier to influence than you truly were. There is something in this card that speaks to perception, to appearances, to what someone thinks they understand when they are only seeing the surface. It feels like they may have believed you still needed external approval, or that you were still defining yourself through someone else's validation. And because of that, they may have underestimated just how much inner work you had already done, how much discernment you had already built, how much of your spiritual maturity had been formed in private. I'm also getting the feeling that part of this assumption came from an old pattern. Maybe they were used to being the stronger presence in the room, used to being the one others leaned on, used to reading people quickly and placing them into familiar roles. And when they looked at you, they may have placed you into one of those old categories. Someone still becoming, someone still learning, someone who could be guided more than they could guide themselves. But what they did not see was the foundation underneath you. They did not see what your solitude had taught you. They did not see what your disappointments had refined in you. They did not see how many times life had already asked you to return to yourself. The energy around this card suggests that they read your external calm incorrectly. They saw composure, but did not recognize self-possession. They saw gentleness, but did not recognize spiritual strength. They saw beauty in your energy, but did not understand the discipline it took to protect it. And that misreading matters, because it shaped the way this dynamic unfolded. It shaped how much they thought they could define the connection, or remain above it. So now we are beginning to see the pattern more clearly, and the next card will help us understand the current state of this connection, and what is really happening beneath the surface now. And now, as we look at the current energetic dynamic, I'm seeing the Knight of Wands here, and this feels like movement, real movement. Something is no longer staying still in this connection. Something is no longer willing to remain in the old shape. I'm picking up that this is the point where the energy begins to turn, not through force, but through momentum. Because your spirit has been gathering itself, your awareness has been deepening, and now that inner shift is starting to change the field around you. This card feels like fire meeting direction. It feels like courage returning. It feels like the moment you stop orbiting someone else's intensity and begin moving from your own. There may still be emotion here. There may still be unanswered questions, but the energy around this card suggests that you are becoming much more conscious of what you will and will not carry anymore. You may be thinking more clearly now. You may be noticing where your energy gets drained, where your truth gets interrupted, where your spirit begins to contract in the presence of certain dynamics. And that awareness is not creating distance by accident. It is creating clarity. I'm also getting the feeling that this turning point may be unsettling for the other person. Not because you are doing anything harsh, but because you are no longer meeting them from the same place. You are beginning to move with more self-trust, more instinct, more inner permission. The imbalance starts correcting itself the moment you stop needing them to name your worth, the moment you stop pausing your own fire to make room for theirs. This card carries a strong sense of reclaimed motion, like energy that once felt tangled is starting to flow again, like the part of you that was waiting, watching, trying to understand, is now beginning to move forward with intention. And even if this shift is still fresh, it is meaningful. It is already changing the tone of the connection. Because once your spirit begins to move in truth, everything built on distortion starts losing its hold. So let's stay with this, because the next card is going to take us deeper into your true feelings and what your heart may have been holding beneath all of this. And now, as we move into your true emotional position, I'm seeing the magician here, and this feels very beautiful. Because beneath everything that has happened, beneath the confusion, beneath the imbalance, your spirit was never actually trying to win. It was never trying to dominate. It was never trying to prove that it was more powerful than someone else. It feels like your deeper truth has always been much quieter than that, much purer than that. I'm picking up that your soul has been standing in a very different place all along. A place of inner connection, a place of creation, a place of knowing that real spiritual power does not need performance. It does not need comparison. It simply moves. It simply aligns. The energy around this card suggests that your heart has been remembering something important. You were not meant to compete for spiritual space. You were meant to hold your own. You were meant to trust what moves through you naturally. your voice, your energy, your presence, your gifts. All of that feels very alive here, and I think that is part of what may soon become even clearer, because when the magician appears in this position, it feels like your emotional truth is beginning to turn into embodied truth. Not just something you feel inside, but something you start living from more fully. You may soon notice that you are becoming less available for distorted dynamics, less willing to shrink, less willing to explain what your intuition already knows, not from hardness, but from alignment. I'm also getting the feeling that there is a calm confidence returning to you, a kind of sacred self-trust, as if your spirit is saying, I do not need to outshine what is false. I only need to become more fully myself. And that changes everything. Because your deeper truth was never about resistance. It was about remembrance. It was about coming back into conscious relationship with your own power, the kind that creates, the kind that restores, the kind that does not need permission. So yes, something is beginning to move here. Your energy is becoming more coherent, more focused, more real to you. And as that happens, the next layer becomes very important. Because now I want to see what may be happening in their true emotional space, beneath the image they tried to hold. And now, as we move into their hidden emotional position, I'm seeing the hermit reversed here. And this feels very revealing, because beneath the image, beneath the confidence, beneath the spiritual identity they may have shown to the world, there seems to be a deep discomfort with true inner stillness. I'm picking up that this may be someone who did not easily rest in their own inner light, someone who may have looked spiritually certain on the outside, but inwardly was still carrying a kind of distance from themselves, a kind of emptiness they may not have wanted to face for long. The energy around this card suggests that their fear was not only about losing control, it may also have been about being left alone with what was unresolved inside them, with comparison, with doubt, with the question of whether their connection was as genuine as it appeared. This feels important because when someone has not fully made peace with their own inner world, they can sometimes become very attached to being seen as wise, or special, or spiritually advanced. Not always out of cruelty, but out of an unspoken fear that without that identity, they may have to meet parts of themselves they do not yet know how to hold. I'm getting the feeling that your presence stirred that in them, your quiet strength, your natural connection, your way of not forcing your light. All of that may have reflected something back to them, something they were not fully comfortable with, something that made comparison rise beneath the surface. And because of that, their energy may have pulled away from true humility or true self-examination. This card feels like avoidance of the deeper cave, avoidance of the deeper truth. And yet that truth is still there, waiting, breathing beneath everything. So if you have been sensing that there was more going on inside them than they ever admitted, this card does seem to validate that feeling. There was insecurity there. There was spiritual loneliness there. There was a fear of not being enough without the image. And that helps us understand the dynamic with more compassion, not to excuse it, but to see it more clearly. And now that this layer is coming into view, the next card will be important, because we are about to look at the blockages in this connection, and what has kept this energy from flowing in a healthier way. And now, as we move into the distortion in this connection, I'm seeing the world reversed here. And this feels very significant, because the energy around this card suggests that something in this dynamic was never allowed to settle into wholeness. It feels like the connection kept circling, kept looping, kept returning to the same emotional atmosphere, even when part of you was trying to make sense of it and move beyond it. I'm picking up that one of the strongest distortions here may have been incompletion. A feeling that something was always just out of reach. Clarity was close, but not fully landing. Peace was possible, but not fully staying. You may have had moments where you felt almost clear, almost grounded, almost free of it. And then something would pull the energy back into confusion. The energy around this card suggests subtle control through emotional interruption. Not always loud, not always obvious, but enough to keep your nervous system slightly unsettled, enough to keep the connection open in a way that did not feel fully clean. There may also have been projection here, a tendency for unresolved energy on their side to spill into the space between you, so that you were left carrying questions that were never truly yours, carrying doubt that did not begin with you, carrying heaviness that seemed to appear without clear reason. And I'm getting the feeling that this did not just happen in private. There may have been outside influences too. Other people, other expectations, an environment that supported image more than truth, an atmosphere where appearances were being protected, while deeper honesty was being delayed. That can create a very disorienting kind of loop, because your spirit was reaching for completion, while the distortion kept the story half open. But this card also tells me something is shifting now. You are beginning to see the pattern for what it is, and once you see the loop, you begin stepping outside of it. That is where your power starts returning in a much clearer way. So now that this external distortion is coming into view, the next card may take us even deeper into the fear or hope sitting beneath all of this, and what your heart may still be holding as this energy changes. And now, as we move into the immediate energetic shift, I'm seeing the Hierophant reversed here, and this feels like the moment the spell begins to break. Very quietly at first, but very clearly. Because this card carries the feeling of stepping outside a structure that once seemed unquestionable. A voice, a role, an authority, a spiritual framework that may have asked you to doubt your own knowing. I'm picking up that the illusion begins to dissolve the moment you stop assigning sacred weight to what was never fully aligned. The moment you begin trusting what your spirit has been showing you all along. This is not a loud rebellion. It feels much deeper than that. It feels like an inner uncoupling. Like your energy is no longer bending towards something just because it presented itself as elevated or enlightened. And I think that is where a deeper emotional truth may live for you. Part of you may have quietly hoped to understand this dynamic without losing your softness, without losing your faith, without becoming guarded in a way that hardens your heart. You may have wanted clarity, but you may also have feared what clarity would confirm. Because once you see that something was distorted, you cannot return to seeing it the same way. And that can feel tender, even when it is liberating. The energy around this card suggests that truth is becoming undeniable now, through contrast. You are beginning to feel the difference between real guidance and subtle control, between spiritual depth and spiritual performance, between what nourishes your soul and what quietly asks you to abandon yourself. That difference is becoming sharper, and as it sharpens, the illusion loses its hold. I'm also getting the feeling that this shift may happen through your body as much as your mind. You may soon notice where peace returns, where tension leaves, where your spirit no longer contracts. That is truth speaking too, not only through thought, but through release. So this card feels like liberation from false structure, liberation from borrowed authority, liberation from the need to seek permission for what your soul already knows. And that is a powerful threshold, because now the final card can show us where all of this is leading, and what begins to emerge when your spirit stands fully in its own truth. And now, as we come to the final card, I'm seeing the Knight of Pentacles here, and this feels very grounding, very steady, very clear, because the outcome here does not feel loud. It does not feel rushed. It feels like truth becoming solid. It feels like your spirit no longer needing to prove itself in order to stand in its power. I'm picking up that the karmic equalization happening here is not about dramatic victory. It is about stability returning to what was once disturbed. It is about your energy becoming so rooted, so consistent, so self-honoring, that false hierarchy simply cannot hold around you anymore. The energy around this card suggests that authentic power is becoming practical now, embodied, lived. Not just something you sense in private, but something that begins shaping your choices, your boundaries, your pace, and the way you carry yourself moving forward. And that is important, because when real spiritual maturity deepens, it often looks very simple, very calm, very unmoved by performance. You are beginning to value what is real over what is impressive, what is consistent over what is grand, what is grounded over what is embellished. And in that space, anything built on image starts losing its weight. That is how the false hierarchy collapses here, not because you fight it, but because you outgrow the need to stand beneath it. I'm also getting the feeling that this card brings restoration to your trust in yourself. Step by step, choice by choice, you are rebuilding from a place that is honest. And because of that, your path ahead feels more peaceful, more protected, more your own. So if this message found you at the right time, let it be a reminder that your spirit was never small. It was only growing in quiet ways. And now that quiet strength is becoming your foundation. Take what resonates, leave what does not, and let this reading be guidance for wherever you are on your path. If this message spoke to you, you can share in the comments. And if you want to stay connected for more readings like this, you can subscribe as well. I'm sending you clarity, peace, and continued trust in your own inner knowing.